Well, hello.
Hey! Here we are.
Are we like trying to start after party that way?
Hey!
What's up, Commons?
Yeah.
Welcome to the after party. Something like that. Who knows?
Oh, here we are. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Feels like winter.
It does feel like winter. I just scraped my car off today.
Yeah.
After, I'm going to pause. I got a little audio.
It's just us yelling at each
I
other.
had to scrape off my car after I got out of work today.
Yeah.
It was like full on
Icy.
scrape. Yeah, like
Like,
every window.
really
the whole
put your elbow
deal.
grease
Yeah.
into it.
I was like, have you ever seen those? There's the ad for these special ones where it's like a little cone and you use that to rubber on your window.
No.
It looks really good. It looks exciting.
I feel like it's something you would have maybe seen on an Instagram ad and gone for.
Totally feels like that type of a thing. Yeah,
I
Bobby's
know
making
you.
fun of me because I one time bought some stupid pair of shoes off an Instagram ad. I never got them. I don't even know if they charged me for them. I have no idea. I forgot about it, and then 6 months later, Bobby's like, "What happened to those shoes you bought?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
I was horrified by it.
Oh well, it was a bad choice.
Throwing around $60 like it ain't no thing.
Terrible choices. Oh well.
Wow. Here we are, and it's Tuesday.
Tuesday night.
Yeah, we were just talking about, what's going on in the world?
I don't know what's happening in the world these days.
There's not much going on.
So the U.S. had an election.
Right, go for it.
They're still having an election.
Right.
They'll probably be having an election for quite a while, apparently.
Yeah.
They can't figure themselves out.
No.
They need a little
Kind of a
space.
mess. They need a deep breath.
They need some
big collective. Take a breath. Calm your nervous system. You're in a lot of fight or flight right now.
That's true.
Just take it easy.
Yeah. It seemed like, honestly, it was calming down a little bit, and then today it felt like things were ramping up again.
Yeah,
So I think we just need to turn them off, turn them back on again, see what happens.
Reset.
Like a
hard
computer reset, a hard reset on America.
Is that still something we talk about? Or a hard reset?
I don't
Control, delete. Just Control, Alt, delete.
That doesn't even work on a Mac, though. It's
Probably hasn't
Command,
worked in like
Control,
20 years.
Escape, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so same type of thing. All right, what do we got tonight?
Okay,
What's on the agenda?
Well, let's just chat a little bit about what's been going on. How's everything at home? What have you guys been up to? Everyone's healthy? What's the latest on Em, really? How's she doing?
Great.
The newest pictures you put up of her
know.
little face.
She's so cute.
Oh my gosh. Every single picture was like just subtly different and just perfect.
She's so beautiful, but she's also,
is.
she is the happiest little baby. Like, it's so funny. She's just so smiley all the time. Like, I don't know what to do with her. Like, she's just so lovely.
I haven't seen her in a number of weeks.
I know. Nobody has. She's been home for a while. So.
Yeah.
But no, she's doing really well. She's going really well. We spent Saturday with her birth mom.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we got to go out for lunch and spend some time with Eaton and Em and her and Rachel and I. So that was really nice because our opportunities have not been, as regular during COVID. Like COVID kind of set things aside. In the summer, we got back into a bit of a pattern. And then now we can talk about this again, but with cases going up and stuff, we haven't gotten together as frequently.
Yeah.
But we did on Saturday. We took her out for brunch and hung out for the day. So that was really nice. So
that's really nice.
good. And she's doing well as well. So
good.
We just heard somebody coming into the church. I saw Bobby's eyes
I know.
shifting to what is happening? Who's coming in?
We typically, in the past we've had basketball
Yes.
here, and maybe people didn't hear it, but we could hear it.
Yes.
We could feel it.
It was like
Basketball
below us
isn't
and
here.
behind us there was basketball happening.
But they're not here now.
Yeah.
But
so who knows?
yeah.
But anyway, Emma's doing great.
That's so good. She
Rachel,
looks
it was a little stressful tonight. Rachel had a board meeting or something tonight.
Oh, yeah.
But I had to leave, and so Eaton was still up. Or trying to get him.
Like, you can take care of the little one, and
she was on a
Mom
Zoom
will be home
call.
in 15 minutes. It's fine.
The Zoom call, and I was rushing into the house.
Oh gosh.
But no, things are well at our house. So
Good,
how about you guys?
Good. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah?
We're good. Yeah.
Jonathan's making stuff in the garage.
Yeah, he's been sorting out that garage. He has so many tools. And
I saw him on Sunday. I asked him.
Yeah?
He said he was nervous.
Nervous.
Said he's like, I'm only doing paint grade stuff so far.
Right.
So he doesn't want to do any like finished carpentry.
He's really he really like scales himself towards the goal. He takes his time.
It's smart. I just like go for things
Right.
and mess it up a few times until I figure it out.
Right.
He's wiser than I am.
He's a wise man. Yeah. Yesterday he was sorting through all these tools in the garage, and he was like, he came in and he's like, I think I can get both vehicles in the garage. And so I went out to take my car out this morning, and they are squished in there right beside.
Really?
But when I got home this afternoon,
Do you have stuff along the sides?
all the sides
yeah,
has
okay.
stuff everywhere, and then the two vehicles are like they're really close to each
Right.
other. But I reversed into that spot one try,
All right.
like a farm girl.
Yeah.
So I did fine with it, but
we
it was
have
really
our
close.
cars, but then we have a deep garage.
Oh,
So in front of the vehicles, that's where I have all my toys and stuff. So,
Right, the-
like my punching bag.
punching bag.
Yeah.
How's that going?
That's good. I like it.
How,
It's fun.
Are you sore?
Not today.
Are you tough?
I'm tough. But, yeah. you know it's not tough. And I mean, should be no surprise to anyone, but my hands are not tough.
Oh, I
So-
guess they type with
Yeah,
two
exactly. This is what I
fingers.
do. I have very soft hands. I sit at it, I
Right.
sip coffee, and I type. I'm an aggressive typer, but
This is true.
Still, it's true. I'm a terrible typer. But this is what I do. It's for my life. Like
Right.
for 20 years now, I have typed and I have drank coffee. That's what I
Yeah.
do. So that's been.
Right, and we're getting old.
It's true.
And like I do find,
And I have a
my
weird broken
hands-
finger.
Oh,
I don't know if people can see this, but I have a weird
How did
finger that I
that
broke
happen?
playing hockey, and it just like healed wrong, and it doesn't go back, and it aches all the time.
Right away.
So when I punch bags, I'm sorry. So
Oh.
that's why I'm building up some calluses
I
on
like
my
that. Some
knuckles.
strength.
Yeah.
But you must do you put big gloves on? What do you put on?
I have some
your-
pretty light gloves, but
Oh, light gloves. Okay.
so 14 ounce, which is a sort of middle of the road gloves.
Okay.
You want a little weight on there.
Tape? Do you tape something?
I have a little tape, yeah.
Some taping.
So, some hand wraps and stuff. so,
Okay.
yeah.
How many times a week are you doing this?
Like most nights.
Really?
Yeah, like just a quick 20, 25 minute workout, get a bit of a sweat and get some cardio going.
Good for you.
I walk the dog, I come home, I do that.
'Kay.
Then I go inside. But I'm not playing hockey this year. So
Yes. Okay. You
I
had to
need
do
I need
something.
some like walking the dog's great. Walking is good for you to be
is so
active. But I don't stretch my cardio, I don't get a sweat or
Yeah.
anything. So I'm not playing hockey. So this year this
That
is my
makes sense.
what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Well, keep us posted.
Okay. So the stuff is in the garage. You were
Right.
able to park.
Yep.
What about you? What are you doing? You were making.
Guess what? I sort of stumbled into the sourdough craze of the pandemic.
So
I
late,
didn't
so
mean
late.
to.
You're like-
My friend Angie said
We're
I'm
9 months-
fashionably late.
We're 9
on
months
this.
in, and I was like, I want to make some sourdough.
I actually wasn't thinking about doing it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was hanging out with some of Jonathan's friends, now my friends as well.
Yes.
And one of them was like, "Oh, I've been really into sourdough." And I said, "Oh, cool." And she said, "I could show you how." And I was like, "Great, I'll come over next week." And then I thought,
And then
what
she
did
was
you
like,
just
"Whoa,
do?
easy."
What did you just do? So I went over on Monday and got some lessons, but I did zero research,
Okay.
no research. So I had no idea.
You and me, we don't know how
How-
to ease into things like Jonathan.
This is
That's it, right?
This is it. So
And I made
was
15
like
loaves of sourdough.
reading and gathering, and then but I was trying to think yesterday, like, oh wait, so I made the sponge. So she gave me the starter. We made the sponge together. I took it home. It needed to sit and like bubble and do its
Right.
thing for a day. But then I was like, oh, then I make the dough the next day, and every half an hour you fold
that's
the
why
dough.
you had it at work
So
today.
I was like, it's bring my sourdough to work day. So I just marched in and I put it downstairs, and every half an hour or so I went and I folded it, and then I baked it when I got home tonight.
Get ready for when Rachel goes back to work in January. That's what I'm going to do with Em. Bring Em to work today. I'm going
get
to put her
ready.
downstairs. Every half hour, I'll fold her. It'll be fine.
My friend who taught me did say, she's like, sometimes I feel like I have a pet now. Like it does take maintenance. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I really like my independence. I'm not sure I like maintenance of
I can't have a
dough.
relationship with a sourdough. I got too much going on
We
right
have no
now.
pets, no kids. We just do what we want.
I got too much going on for this. I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But anyways,
that's good. Did you?
I think I actually enjoyed
bake it now?
I baked it. I baked it this evening
Okay, how did
while
it
I was
turn out?
making dinner. It turned out beautifully.
Okay.
I'll
Did
just
you
show
do
a
it in a
picture.
pot?
I did it in a Dutch oven.
Yeah.
I was a bit afraid my Dutch oven it's a big boss of a Dutch oven. I was a bit worried it was too
Le
big.
Creuset?
It is a Staub. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like enamel. It's gorgeous.
I know that brand.
It's lovely. It looks good. I didn't cut into it because you're supposed to let it
Yeah,
really cool or it
totally.
gets too gummy. I'm reading now that I'm here. But really curious.
Last year I did a ton of research when I bought my cast iron.
That's right. How's that working out?
Oh, I love it. It's amazing.
Oh, your eyes really just did
totally. It's amazing. But I did look at some like enameled cast iron, but I went with a raw, polished cast iron from Stargazer. So good. So good. I use it all the time.
I love good quality stuff in the kitchen.
So this thing will either
For
Em or Eaton, one of them will get it.
Amazing.
This thing will be around forever. So
it will outlive you.
I've had it. I've had it for 2 years now because I've seasoned it twice.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah, because it came unseasoned.
I mean, it's so weird now because we've almost been in COVID for years. So. What even is time?
Speaking of which, good segue.
Yeah.
What are we doing with COVID?
Oh, we're continuing on.
I mean, we've been talking about it more. We have a board meeting this week. We're talking about what are our criteria for moving back online. What does that look like? For now, we're continuing forward with really quite I don't know if stringent's quite the right word, but we're paying a lot of attention to our health and safety protocols.
Yeah.
But we've continued with an in-person service. But looking at, with cases rising in Alberta, code red is what they called it in Manitoba this week, and then another big lockdown in BC happening.
It's kind of
exactly. So whether our province does anything or not, is there a point where we need to do something?
Right. And we're really aware that Christmas Eve is on the horizon. So that's a big thing that we're considering.
Yeah.
What that gathering will look like, or will it be online only?
Yeah.
That's ongoing
It's just an interesting time, sort of.
And though, I mean, I think people must be doing this in their personal lives too. You move forward a little bit with a plan and then you pull back a little bit. Like we were moving forward with entertaining the noon service again and bringing it back. We sent out a survey. We got some good feedback, and then there was no point to go forward. Yeah. So that was, we're trying our best to be really wise and careful and take a step. But sometimes when you start kind of making some plans towards a thing, you realize, we can't. And I think that's true in people's personal lives
Such an interesting thing right now, because I mean, we there have been a lot of people on the waiting list, and we're like, okay, let's see if we can make some more room for you. We sent out the survey, we're ready to go, and then it was like as soon as we sent out that survey is when cases really started to rise, and then all of a sudden the wait list over the last 2 weeks has shrunk back down.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, it is what it is. We'll manage with this.
And still, Sundays feel lovely.
Oh, they do. I mean, they are their own thing. Yeah. You can't compare them to what we used to do, but everyone's so careful. The space feels. I don't go out a lot. Mm-hmm. Like I go to the grocery store. I'm running maybe a couple errands, see a couple friends, but. When I go to the grocery store, I have a different sort of feeling of anxiety. When I'm here on a Sunday in our little crowd with the big space that we're in, I always feel like I feel really comfortable here. Yeah. I feel really like things are taken care of. People are really respectful. Totally. Yeah. Everybody follows the rules. Yeah. Everybody's really gracious to each other and thoughtful about all of that. So, but we'll see what happens in the next little bit here. Yeah. So, all right.
We'll probably change many times.
Probably will.
That's always what we've talked about. We have to be flexible and ready to
there's been,
change.
I mean, we had the initial shutdown, which came really quick. Mm-hmm. We had an opening in the summer back to in-person. Then we had a 2-week shutdown to adjust for the Calgary bylaws, get all our plexiglass in place and reopen. Yeah. So, I mean, we've already been through a couple different stops and starts and adjustments and stuff. So, but we continue to learn. And we also continue to get better at the live stream every week. Yeah. Like, we learn little bits. We've made some investments over the last couple of months that haven't been put into place in the live stream in terms of our audio. Kevin's working really hard on that, but I'm quite excited for what that's going to look like when we finally put all that in place, because it should help, particularly the worship, sound just that much better or that much cleaner on the live stream.
And consistently.
Exactly. So
that experience. Yeah, that's good. Uh-huh. That's good. Well, let's chat about, I did want to mention, the fact that next Tuesday, we realized we have a number of cool things happening, which we're going to give After Party the bump. So there is a worship night happening on Tuesday. We've decided.
Here on the live stream.
Exactly, on the live stream. Yeah. So we technically and literally can't run
That's right. We can only
things at the same time.
We can only run one live thing at a time on a channel.
Right. So After Party will take a snooze next week. jump in for worship night. It'll be lovely, but it's not in the room. It's only on YouTube.
Yeah. So our teams will be here in the room.
Yeah.
And it'll be just like if you haven't experienced one of the worship nights before, it's like a longer, extended worship set. So it's usually 6 to 8 songs.
Like an extended contemplative prayer, reflective
with some prayers
prayer.
and some moments of silence, all those types of things built in. So that'll be happening next Tuesday here on the channel. It's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. The worship teams always do a great job on it.
They really do.
But after part, I'll get bumped. But then also on Tuesday nights, which will be continuing, is Backstory.
Yeah.
So that's been our... we have done Backstory in the past, but this is new.
Yeah,
it's our
same
introduction
name,
to a
refreshed
Jesus-centered
course.
reading of the Bible. So that's going to continue. And then we're looking at the next year for another 2 more rounds of these 4-week courses because the response has been really great. People
Next year, you mean just 2021? Not
exactly in the spring, in the winter, spring. So coming up real soon.
Right,
so,
it's great.
Fun times.
People are loving them.
Yeah,
loving them.
people are really digging it, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right, what do we got? So it's Sunday.
Sunday.
You spoke.
I preached. What do you got?
I like that.
So we started a new series.
Yeah, I was going to say you kicked us off in a new series. So what's the series about for you? Because this is kind of an interesting thing, right? Like, we all have our own takes on sermons, but sometimes we all have our own takes on a series, and what's that about?
That's a really good point. Well, the language I used on Sunday was that we thought we'd drag some of the themes of hospitality with us into this moment. So, what does it mean to be hospitable, to live hospitably, if we aren't throwing open our doors to one another, and the room doesn't look the same as it used to when we had a bunch of services and people packed and needing them to hang their coats at this time of year because we needed room for the people. What does it look like to and feel like, and why does that still matter to us? This theme of hospitality. So making more room.
Yeah, and I think we are gonna look at it from different angles. So you did one-on-one.
Yeah.
Elena will be doing sort of peer groups. Next week, I'm going to talk about crowds in the 3rd week, and then in that sort of interactive Zoom one that you announced, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. Elena's going to facilitate it. We're going to do some breakout rooms.
This is the thing I'm most excited about. I mean, you're going to do a bit, and that will be great. But
whatever.
But actually, Elena's been doing all this learning in this time of COVID around how to really engage one another and engage a group of people in Zoom. For lack of better language, but she's been really learning the skills of good Zoom, meaningful time spent looking at your screen and
how to move in and out of not just sort of watching the screen like a Sunday, but just sort of back and forth between conversation and all that. So
and to walk away not just feeling like, oh, that was exhausting, but like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I tuned in.
Well, we'll see. You're putting a lot of pressure on her.
It's gonna be great. I have no doubt it's going to be great. In
Elena. I'm just saying, you're really hyping this up, so that's good.
I will not let up.
But I like this idea of making more room and talking about one-on-one, peer groups, crowds, and cultures.
Yeah.
How do we make room for all those different types of conversations in our lives, which was different than last year, where we more talked about hospitality, inviting people in different ways, which was actually... I want to say surprisingly good. Of course, it was a good series, but I really enjoyed that series.
Somebody sent me a message after I did the sermon on Sunday and said they were so glad we were returning to making room. Yeah. They said it was their favorite last year.
Oh, cool. I actually, I don't know why, but I didn't have a ton of excitement going into it. But then when I started writing those messages, when I started hearing, because it was you and Yelena as well in that series, I started hearing those. I really got into that series. I really enjoyed it. So if you missed it, go check it out on our channel back there somewhere. Okay, so let's talk. What was your story? You were in John.
Yeah, I was in John 4. 46 to 50 something, whatever it was. And I was flipping through and we were left kind of to decide on our own scripture, which typically we choose a little earlier. And this time we were like, well, okay, I'm going to choose one.
This was pandemic journal a little bit.
This is true. This is true. We kind of, anyways. So I sat with it for a day. I was thinking about what are the one-on-one interactions Jesus has. Okay, I made a list. And then I thought, what's one we haven't talked about? That kind of thinned out the list. And then this one, what drew me to it originally? I don't even know if I can remember. I liked this conversation that they have. I was quite drawn to a bit of a back and forth. And then when I got studying it and looking at the story in its context, I loved lining them up.
That was cool. I liked that.
That, and I
So
could
you said lining them up. So, what's the them?
So it was Nicodemus, the Samaritan woman at the well, and then the royal official. So I love the diversity of, I just said a triad, like just looking at these, and it's still so early in the Gospel of John. So, you have these, in 2 chapters, you have these really diverse, different exchanges between Jesus. And I was looking for tension. Like I really was like, I like to hold some tension in the beginning of the message. Like what's kind of like, what's the problem? Like what's our problem? What's the problem? And then how is that addressed, later? So I was looking for tension. And this like 3-sentence exchange really had something for me. And then it continued to open up and there were lots of layers. So I started talking.
Do you remember the language you used around, you talked about, like the line I remember from you was you joked about, hey, it's hard to say that Jesus has a type. But you described the 3 characters.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember the language you used because I just liked the way you talked about like the sort of range of different interactions Jesus was having.
Can I find it? Yeah.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
That was quick.
I think it was like by focusing on the one, Jesus makes room for all. Room for a Pharisee who wants to believe, that part.
Yeah.
Room for a woman who wants to be known. Room for a royal official who wants his son to be made well. Yeah. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like we can enter into all of those stories.
Totally, yeah.
When you sort of like peel back the details a little bit and have just the basic, like here's someone seeking with all this knowledge for something of his heart. Here's a woman with lots of layers to her social reality and her interpersonal relationships. Can you imagine the longing of just being known, someone really seeing you? And then the royal official showing up, not for himself, but for his son, miles and miles down a road. Yeah.
So I love
desperation of it.
First of all, I love that contrast, but I also, for whatever reason, that line about by focusing on the one, Jesus makes room for all of us, really grabbed my imagination. That idea that the way I thought of it was this: when you try to make room for everyone in the sort of lowest common denominator way. Like, what do we all have in common? Like, let's focus on that. Nobody really feels known or embraced or made room for.
That's really cool.
When we're only invited for the thing that we always obviously know we share with everyone.
Right.
I'm not saying that's bad, but you never sort of feel the same kind of warmth and hospitality until there's something sort of that's uniquely known about you in any interaction, but particularly with Jesus. Like, I'm talking about the crowds at the end of this, and I'm about to say it's hard to identify with the crowds. Like those stories, I'll find a way.
But you will.
But, I think in some ways, though, we tend to come at those crowd stories more around the wisdom Jesus is imparting or what he's teaching. Because you don't see yourself in a crowd, which is a really interesting thing. You see yourself in a specific person.
Exactly.
Right? That you're like, oh, that piece. And what I think is, I don't know why, but it struck me about the way you phrased it was, I can see myself in Nicodemus, even though I don't share a lot in common with a Jewish religious leader in the first century. I can see myself in this Samaritan woman, even though I don't share a lot of common with her. I can see myself in this centurion, even though I don't share anything there. Because when you pull out centurion man who cares for his family and things, then I'm like, I get that piece.
Yeah.
Or the Samaritan woman who feels like a little pushed aside and not really known, then, regardless of my difference from her, I can grab a hold of that piece. Or, Nicodemus, your phrase was that wants to believe, which I love as a sort of descriptor of faith sometimes. That,
Right.
Half of faith is believing and half of faith is just wanting to,
right?
I
like
and
that.
the struggle of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For whatever reason, I was just really captivated by that idea that none of us ever feel known in these broad addresses that Jesus has, at least not to the extent that we do when we peel back the layers and we look at an individual person. And I think that goes for all of us, right? In like real life, not just Bible life or whatever. Like,
IRL.
Yeah, IRL. That's the term I was looking for.
Yeah, I mean, in part, what I was doing was like I worried a bit when I was writing that I was like over emphasizing this one-on-one. Like that was my charge. You know, I was the person preaching about one-on-one encounters and relationships. So I was really going for it. Like I kind of thought, am I over exaggerating it? But something I love about writing and poetry is like how the particular is universal. Like the more detail you read in a poem, the more you're welcomed to the ideas in the same way, or you get to sort of locate yourself in the universal. So I liked that as well. Mm-hmm. But I also love the way that there's like a slowing down in these stories. Like there's room for conversation. There's this back and forth. My language on Sunday was we clash all the time. You know, you bring these two people together and like for them to get towards one another, there's always in these encounters some like, what do you mean I have to be born again? Like, well, let me tell you what that means. No, it doesn't mean like what, you know, there's this like, Jesus says to the royal official, all you people want is signs and wonders. Yeah. And he says, I don't care about that. You know, it was like, I just want my kid to be better, you know? So I just loved this, like
kind of wrestling.
Yeah. And that there's room for that. Yeah. There's room for people as they approach Jesus to evolve in their approach and like that takes some shedding and some reimagining and some new ways of perceiving ourselves or perceiving the world or obviously perceiving the divine. That like that's not something you just like skip into. It's like kind of painful to make our way, I think, sometimes towards Christ. And I think sometimes we're sold this like, you just come to Jesus, it'll be better. But like maybe it'll be like.
So I mean, a lot of what you're saying is interesting because it actually made a comment here, and I think part of what you're talking about is part of that balance. So she's saying like, you know, isn't that sort of idea of, you know, your unique self sort of a modern invention in more communal cultures, like ancient Palestine, would they not have sort of identified in their groups rather than individuals? And I think there is something to that, especially around this idea of, you know, capitalism driving us to individualism and I'm unique and I'm special and I have to be known. But the way that you're sort of talking about that we come in the crowd, we're drawn to Jesus, but then out of that, there's this sort of wrestling that has to happen for us to be really known in the midst of it. Right. We can overdo that by saying, hey, I'm too unique and you can never understand me and I'm, you know, our capitalist emo phase, you know, that kind of thing. Nobody understands me because I'm special. Yeah. And we can go too far with that. Yeah. But at the same time, there is that kind of wrestling to say, who am I out of this crowd? And how does Jesus welcome the whole thing? I mean, that's what we're going to talk about at the end of the series. Yeah. Welcome everyone. You know, the phrase I think I'm going to use in that series is that, you know, in the crowd for Jesus, everyone is welcome as long as everyone is welcome. Mm-hmm. You know, and as long as everyone is, then you are. Yeah. If you're not willing to welcome everyone, then you're not really here in this crowd with us in the same way. But then out of that welcome comes the freedom to wrestle with your particular story and the way you engage with Jesus and the specific needs that you have. Yeah. Right? Because we all have our shared need for care and for family, but some of us have a unique need for a specific daughter who's sick and needs Jesus. Yeah. And I think that kind of emerging from, but not being totally consumed with our uniqueness is maybe the tension that we all have to try to find a better balance in. Yeah. I like that. Right. So anyway.
Yeah. I do like that too. I think as well, there's just, I have to think about where I want to go with that. I'll come back to it.
It's fine. There's lots of ways you can go with it.
Yeah, I don't have a fully formed idea.
What's the next section you want to talk about?
Let's see.
See what I got on my phone?
What do you got on your phone there, Jer? What do you want to talk about my sermon?
The focusing on the one, I really like that. Yeah. You had, there's another point I want to get to, but you had a section early about why you chose this version of the story.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to other gospel narratives.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying to think about your line that you used in there, but there was just a section about the sort of uniqueness of the particulars telling that you liked? Or?
Yeah, I think I sort of just stumbled into it and then was like, oh, it's in 2 other places. Yeah. Great. And then
because John, that's not always the case. I mean,
yes, exactly.
Anything, sometimes you read a story and you just assume that it's like, oh, if it's John, it's his own thing. And then you're like, oh, somebody else read about this too?
Yeah. And then when I zoomed out on that, I thought, oh, this is really beautiful, that like different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Was it the same story? Was it? Right. We're talking about the same characters or not? Maybe some days I think yes, maybe some days I think no. But I think my brain is like...
Well, I mean, we came at this a couple times in Strange Exchange.
Yes, I know. Yeah, exactly. That I like that there's room for different perspectives, different details on this. And it's not a threat to our intimacy and our encounter with Jesus. That like... all of these different details in the story bring us to the same place. And I thought there's something for us in one-on-one interactions. I mean, I was writing this sermon before the U.S. election, knowing I was going to preach it right after the U.S. election. So that was a fascinating thing to have looming around me and thinking about different perspectives.
And sort of like looming beside you, right? It's like as a comedian, it's like... it's this thing, you can't ignore it. It's also not our story. Yeah. It's like,
but I have friends that I talk to all the time, and I lived in California for 3 years. So my experience, and I lived in America in a really wild time. Like I moved there just before 9/11, and in the first year 9/11 happened, and I stayed for a couple of years after. So my experience of America is like a pretty intense one. So you know, I'm tracking this stuff not only as like a neighbor, but as somebody who like lived there and worked there and has friends there. So, it was a really interesting thing to think about. What does it mean if we're not like? I mean, what could this story offer the world in this moment? That's too big of a question.
Well, I mean, it is and it isn't, right?
At some level, like if there's different perspectives, even within how the Gospels tell a story, you know, what doesn't that offer us an invitation that like, oh, we can make room for different details and like continuing to like live with different facts and never talk to each other and never meet someone different from you is not making the world a better place. So do the Gospels almost as if they were people and have these different perspectives on these stories, is that offering us something that is even like quite holy?
It's an interesting thing right now because you have, I think there's a rightful, I don't like this language, but I'll say, you know, righteous anger around like, hey, people who don't make room for others, you know, don't deserve their place at the table or their voice. Like, I mean, we shouldn't sort of just say that everybody gets to have their opinion when somebody's opinion is hurtful and it's damaging other people. This is the line I'm going to use at the end of the series. Like, everyone is welcome as long as everyone is welcome. Those two things have to go together. But I think because of some of it's partisan politics, let's be honest. Some of it is the way things are perceived and not necessarily intended. But I think we have seen too much in our culture of everyone who doesn't think like me or see the world like me is an enemy.
Exactly.
And therefore, if I make room for them, I'm making room for everything that they think, everything that they view.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this is happening to the right, to the left, from the right, from the left. Like, this is really, there's a lot of bad partisan politics out there. The idea of scapegoating is not a partisan idea.
Right.
We all want an enemy. Exactly. We all want to have someone to blame.
Rennie Girard.
We all want to have someone to blame for our ills. And finding that balance, because there is a real important piece there to say, if you are not willing to make room for everyone, then we can't make room for you because by your inclusion, you're going to exclude other people that need community. There is a line for that, you know? So I'm not naive and I'm not saying it's easy and I'm not saying just love and hugs is going to save the world. But I think too quickly we lean into that without saying, hey, I'm struggling with the way that you see the world. I think it's problematic, but I still want to listen to you. I still want to hear these things. And I think all of us need to, you know, take a step back sometimes from our emotions that rise up and really have an honest conversation with ourselves to say, is this a person we need to draw a line with because they're they're leaving no room for no one else?
Right.
Or is this a person that just offends me or bothers me or annoys me or frustrates me with the way they see the world? And I have to be willing to engage and listen to them. I don't have to be willing to agree. I don't have to be willing to change my mind. Right. But I have to be willing to recognize them as a beloved child of God.
With like real pain, real heartache, real longing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it feels to me sometimes like, in certain conservative churches, there's certain types of stories that they're very easy to see as a broken child of God who needs love. And sometimes in more progressive churches, it's very hard for us to see hardcore, conservative, traditional Christians as beloved children of God that need more grace in their lives, right? So I think it's very easy for me to see the person outside of Christianity as someone who needs grace. Yeah. It's very hard for me to see a Christian who feels very closed off or bigoted sometimes as a person who needs grace. Right. And that tension of where do you draw the lines, but where do you blur the lines and invite people into conversation, I think is really important. I think it's a skill that we need right now. Yeah. And I think that's part of what I sort of in the background took away from your sermon. Yeah. When you have, especially that piece around Jesus talking to Nicodemus, this religious leader who doesn't believe but wants to. Yeah. This woman who he had every sort of social reason not to engage with. Yeah. And this centurion who, let's be perfectly honest, is part of the oppressor class.
Exactly.
Right?
We are not supposed to like this man.
Yes, he's a Roman centurion. Yeah. He
represents opulence, even, was some of the language I came across, like Herodian opulence. Yeah.
And here is Jesus, a Jewish man who's had his land taken away from him, who could be forced by the centurion to carry his bags for a mile. That's where the whole, if somebody asks you to go a mile, go two with them. It's because a centurion could ask any non-Roman citizen to carry his bags anywhere he wanted them to go. This man could have done that to Jesus. He doesn't, so he's not the worst expression of that, but Jesus doesn't write him off because of that place of privilege that he has. He engages with him. And that's a tough balance to figure out. Yeah. And I think sometimes we're afraid of going there. Yeah. And it's easier to just not engage the conversation.
Right.
So
it makes me wonder what Jesus received from those moments. Mm-hmm. I had some language around reciprocity and some tension, tug of war, and transformation. I think I was spinning to notice their experience of their encounter with Jesus. But it makes me wonder as we're talking, what was it like for the human Jesus to encounter such diversity, such difference, such tension, and be I'm pursuing the best in you. Yes. I'm pursuing
Yeah, I refuse to see the worst in you.
No, we are
until you prove to me that the worst is all there is.
Yeah,
that kind of a thing. Like imagine.
Do you preach sermons for a living?
So you think about Judas, right?
Right.
Right to the end, Jesus is like, hey, come, let's break bread together. Let's have wine. Let's sit down. Like right to the end, Jesus is, I think there's a way you can read Jesus in this sort of prophetic voice where Jesus knows what's coming and has resigned himself to it. That's not what I read. Mm-hmm. I read a Jesus who has a prophetic sense of what's going to happen with Judas, but right into the last minute is hoping things are not going to go that way.
Yeah.
You get those glimpses of that in the Garden of Gethsemane. If there's any way to do this, God, let's go that way.
Yeah.
And I think you imagine Jesus. I've spent years with this guy. Mm-hmm. I know it's coming, but he's not going to do it. At the end, he's not going to do it. Yeah. And I think Jesus lives in that tension of always wanting to have the best in there. Yeah. And again, I go back to a couple weeks ago, the woman who crawls up behind Jesus and touches the hem. What we're not saying here is everyone's on equal footing and we should treat everyone equally. No. Because that's not what Jesus does. Jesus gives priority to the woman who no one is looking out for. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But he also doesn't ignore the rich, wealthy, religious guy who needs help too. Yeah. He does this beautiful thing where he prioritizes one. Yeah. That preferential option for the poor.
Love it.
But that doesn't discount the humanity of Jairus.
Yeah, it doesn't stop there. Right. It's not a full stop. Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we lean into the cultural expectations, and then we get captivated by the story of Jesus. Mm-hmm. and it blows our mind and it subverts all of that. And we have this option for the poor and we lean into that and we're all about justice. But we forget the other part of the story where it's like, but after that, like we can reprioritize the world.
Yeah.
But that doesn't leave anyone outside.
Yeah.
You know, those who had the privilege before, maybe they have to wait, but they're not discarded.
Right.
No one's discarded in the kingdom of God. That's the point of the kingdom of God.
Right.
Man, that's tough to live into.
Yeah, especially again in like the shadow of the rhetoric that we
right
live
now,
in. Yeah. It's easy to be like, you're so wrong.
Yeah. And let's
shut up.
Let's be perfectly honest here.
Right.
As white people,
yeah.
I want to believe that the ways that we have contributed to injustice in the world don't disqualify us from the kingdom of God. Like I'm part of that. I benefit from that. Yeah, I'm going to do my best to work against that. I'm going to do my best to work for change.
Yeah.
But I mean, my hope has to tell me that just my participation in injustice in the world is never going to write me off in God's mind, you know?
I mean, it makes me think about the title for our series, Making More Room, and my own journey in ministry was, sometimes against places that didn't welcome my full leadership, my full voice. And so my commitment to, in my imagination, I always thought I always have to, if I get where I want to go, who's behind me and how do I advocate for them and make more room? Because I have to fight, a little bit, not as much as so it made me think about LGBTQ friends who were committed to ministry and then got fired from jobs and pushed to the margins. And I thought I have to land somewhere where I am a part of welcoming and like full everything.
So you and I are both 8s on the Enneagram. We don't need to go crazy on the Enneagram. Come on, Bobby.
I don't know. I think I'm a 4.
Just make your peace with it. I don't know. I mean, everybody has to wrestle through those things. But I think there's definitely some tendencies there. But
I do have some tendencies.
I think what is, and again, Enneagram is just a tool. It is what it is. I think it's been a helpful tool for me.
Yeah.
But so the 8 is the person who enjoys the fight and wants a cause and wants something to rally behind and fight for. The worst part of an 8, which I think let's be perfectly honest, I think part of where I've gotten in my career was because of the worst tendencies of an 8 in my 20s, where I was like, I am going to fight for what's mine. I'm going to grab a hold of every opportunity I can, and I'm going to make that for myself. And that can be good. It gives you opportunities, but you can also sort of ignore other things around you. The healthiest expression of an 8 is what you just talked about, which is, again, I'm not saying you find your process, but the healthiest expression of an 8 is when you're able to say, I am going to grab a cause, but I'm going to use that cause to make space for the person who's coming behind me. And I think there's lots of ways that fighting for myself has given me lots of opportunities in my life. What I'm most proud of in my career is the ways that I've used the platform that I have created for myself to give opportunities to all of our team.
Like me! Hey! I benefited.
No, but I mean, I think that's the beauty of even some of what we're talking about from the other side of it, is once you recognize where you sit on that spectrum of privilege, where you sit on that spectrum of power, you can still use all of that fire and all of that passion that's inside of you.
Yeah.
You just have to redirect it in different ways.
Yeah.
And I would argue from personal experience that once you get to the other side and you realize, oh, now I have fought for someone else and I've created a space for that person. You realize it's so much more satisfying to be part of that. And you don't even lose much anyway. Like people notice those things anyway. Like when you do fight people are like, oh, you're a good person.
You're so progressive.
But I mean, the truth is you don't end up losing out.
Right.
Like you end
it's not scarcity.
It's exactly. Yeah. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah.
Is the more you advocate for the people, the more you give your platform away, the more there is for all of us.
Yeah.
Because that's the brilliance of the sort of that kingdom mindset.
Yes.
It's not prosperity, it's abundance.
Yes.
That I give away and there's always more there and there's more opportunities that you get to lean into. We kind of got way off track in that, but that was a good conversation.
Good, stamped it.
Yeah.
Approved.
What do we got left here?
8 approved.
Well, I think what I found was interesting was we kind of started from, that sort of making room for people on the other side to okay, now how do we shift our thinking and our voice and platform, which is, it was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, I do wanted to ask you about this other thing.
Okay.
You had this neat part at the end.
So the signs.
So it was the part I pulled out on the highlight on Instagram.
I saw that,
yeah. But you did this really neat thing where you took, John has this motif of signs in the first half of the book. And
how many, Jer?
I want to do a series on this
I know.
someday. So I think we'll come back to it. But there's 7 signs in the first half of the book, and then there's this long gap where there's no miracles in the second half of John until you get to resurrection.
Right, 8th.
Yeah,
right.
This is the 8th one. So you have these sort of motif of the 7 miraculous days of creation, and then this long groaning and waiting until the resurrection, which is the new Sunday, first day, or Monday, the new week of creation.
That's lovely. I didn't do any of that.
No, I mean, it wouldn't have made sense in the context of one sermon on one sign.
Right, yeah.
But I do.
Yeah, you can't preach that all the time.
Can't do that all. But I want to do a series to go through the 7 signs, and I want to land on
really
Easter
good.
on the 8th sign, and I want to do that one. Maybe we'll do that in the journal next year. But
we'll be ready for
you did this really neat thing where at the end, you talked about John counting up the signs. So there's the big John, cosmic idea of all these
which
miracles.
is how it starts and how it ends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you went the other way, which was what I found interesting was it was the same kind of thing I did with the week 8 in Strange Exchange. So the week before, I talked about the agape love coming down to the philia love.
Okay.
You took these signs of John that are this marker of cosmic recreation, and then you went to your partner drawing a bubble bath or a stranger giving you a smile. The idea of that sort of taking this huge cosmic idea and driving it so small. I just thought was really cool. So where did you come up with that?
Wow, that's
such a perfect expression of this one-on-one,
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Out of the crowd, we narrow in on one.
Where did I come up with that? I don't even remember.
That's fine.
The process.
What was important to you to express it that way?
I feel
And even maybe you don't even know, but the specific examples you used were so
right.
Well, so specific and tender, and
Oh, right, because my thing was to keep counting, count up all the signs, and that's maybe what will be, So my biggest idea of the message was the Word of God travels between us to bring us back to life. Yeah. So I was trying to ground that because some people like big ideas like that. I love big weird ideas like that, but I also know people sitting in our community, my husband being one of them, who's just what are you even talking about? The Word of God traveling. He did not say this to me, to be fair. But I can sometimes hear his voice, which is I don't know what you mean. Can you ground that idea? So I was thinking, how do I ground this idea?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say it, and before the experience of people being what does she mean? I want to just ground it. And so I was thinking exactly that kind of cosmic beginning of John. By the end, I just wanted to imagine that he's I can't count them anymore. Sure, there are 8, but also there are countless, he says.
Sounds around us all the time.
You couldn't fit them in all the books of the world, or whatever the verse is exactly. But it's if I were to count them up, you couldn't count them. They couldn't be contained in all the books of the world. And I thought, what does it look like when you start to lose count of the signs of God? Well, and I said, maybe once in your lifetime you'll have a pyrotechnic moment where you notice the work of the divine in your life. But what if it's just in again, just bringing us back to what is it really like for the Word of God to travel between us, to bring us back to life? And I just got thinking, well, where did I feel that this week? Where something traveled between me, and I literally walked past a woman walking her dog, and she said hi to me, and I almost cried. I just was the world is so beautiful. And then I just riffed on that. And then I thought, what do you have to receive? What do you have to give? And then maybe we can get through this season, because all around us is life. And Andy Vanny did so beautifully in our Zoom lounge.
In the Zoom lounge.
He said, I got really fixed on this idea of life, and I journaled it. Hope you don't mind, Andy. and it was like tracing signs of life. And that is the sign of the word of God traveling between us in this season where it's going to feel sometimes like we're dying.
So I went into, because we had talked about it during the week, you know, that big cosmic idea of John. I was like, we got to save this. I want to do a sermon about it, a series about it later. And then when I heard that piece, I was like, when I read your piece and went through that, I was like, we have to find a way to do both of those. It'll be different whenever we do this in a year or two, whatever. But like, that's the piece, is like taking that big cosmic thing and driving it down.
Yeah.
Just like the sermon was about, which was that one-on-one piece, that out of the crowd, you know, we resonate most when it becomes not just the sort of the example, but the experience of something small and unique and tangible and touchable in our lives.
Because pastorally, people ask us these kinds of questions all the time, like, how do I sense God? Or I don't know what it's like to have a relationship with God. I don't really feel much of that, or I don't really know what prayer means anymore in my life. You know, all of the ways. And I guess, I just wanted to say, like, what if all of these moments of life are the signs of the divine? And that's amazing. It's amazing that we could be in a pandemic and we can have all these worries. But there's all this, like, I mean, we just did a whole week of noticing beauty through our daily prayers, beauty prayers, and daily beauty, we called them. So again, it was this idea of like, look around. Like, I think, and all that to say, I know, like, sometimes our mental health and our, you know, people who struggle with depression.
We're not downplaying that at all.
Like, exactly. But do you have a day that feels a little better? Are your meds kicking in and helping you? You know, like, could that be a sign of life for you in one day that gets you through? And can you then trace that back to a sign and wonder?
Yeah, it makes me think of Colossians, you know, just that all things are created in and through him. He sustains all things. That the Christ is what is holding all things together. Like the fact that the molecules of my body don't drift off into the universe on their own is a sign of life. And every breath, that breathe in of Yahweh and breathing out, and, you know, and that's that cycle that's happening in our respiration all the time. Like, even to narrow it down to those things and just take a moment while you walk to think about your breathing. I mean, all of that. Totally. And then to take it to, that smile, that little conversation, and the way that you send signs to people.
So
it's 8:45.
Oh, yeah. We're, okay. So, it's past 8:45. It's 5:02.
8:54 is what I'm saying. I got I'm not dyslexic, but I did mix up the 5 and the 4 on my screen right now.
Right. Okay.
What do we want to hit before we go?
I do want to say that I read a book that I really enjoyed just before I wrote this sermon, and it's a book about friendship. It's called Big Friendship: How We Keep Each Other Close by Aminatou Sow and Anne Friedman. They have a podcast about being friends. I actually haven't listened to it, and I listen to a lot of podcasts.
You do?
But the book was lovely. If anybody wants to just kind of dive into some more thinking about friendship and their journey of friendship and their differences, it's lovely. And it's a fun read. So
book recommends.
Book recommends.
From Making More Room.
After Party.
The book that we're using for Cultures is by Damayanti Niles, and it's called... I don't know. I'll find it.
Well,
I did read. Yeah, it's true.
Talk about it.
I did read. This is totally unrelated, but I read Annihilation again this week. I love that book so much.
Fiction.
Yeah, I read it again this week, and then I convinced my wife to read it.
And she's into it?
No, she won't be into it. She won't even enjoy it. But she did agree to read it so I could talk to somebody. Nobody's read this book. People have seen the movie. The movie was beautiful.
I love a book conversation. So
read Annihilation.
We can.
I'll talk to you about it. Anybody's read Andy Vanny, have you read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer?
Here we go.
I feel like Andy might be someone who's actually read this book. Let's see. I'm gonna bet 50% that Andy's read this book. I feel like that's pretty high.
50% is good. Andy is here. Anyway. Okay, great.
Annihilation. That's what I read this week. Has nothing to do with spirituality or friendship.
No, Aminatou Sow and Anne Friedman's book isn't like under a particular like religious tradition, but it's about two women being friends, and it's great. Yeah. So let's close with gratitude.
Yes.
Quickly.
Yeah. What are you grateful for?
I'm really really grateful for the opportunity to kind of work out some ideas. Like we get this, we get to do this in our lives. Like I think I was like, I want to work out theologically some ideas, and I got to do that and do it beautifully. And then I got to interact with this professor that,
that was a very cool story. We didn't even talk about that here. That was a great story.
He was so lovely. He said, if perchance your message is online, I would love it if you'd send it. So I sent him the link today.
And you said, by chance it is.
It was so lovely. Also, that was very Shakespearean. I kind of did a sermon within a sermon. And I don't know if people would have noticed, but it brought me great delight. So he is not.
Okay.
Andy
I
is
saw
not.
that, yes. Yeah, that's a good one.
So I'm really grateful to work out ideas and then to reach back into my story and bring some of those ideas with me from that lecture and kind of returning to that. So it was great. Also, big props to Susan Basude, who's the friend who encouraged me to write Dennis Danielson in the first place. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah.
Hopefully she's watching right now.
Yeah.
Silently somewhere.
Classic.
Classic Susan. Now she's like, she's closing her computer.
Totally. Don't say my name.
All right. What am I grateful for this week? Let me think. I think right now, with again rising uncertainty around COVID, I am very grateful for a staff team and a board and a community that's able to have, I think, very I don't know how to say this, but sort of like grown-up conversations around hard decisions.
Yeah, no one's like, no.
Yeah. So people are thoughtful and they're open and they're clear.
Yeah.
They're also, I'm very grateful that we have a team that is willing to share their opinions and thoughts about things and not feel that they're going to be, judged by that or they're not threatened by that. So I think, right now things are pretty stable, but it's possible we might have to make some decisions in the next couple of weeks, or Alberta might have to make some decisions or whatever. And I am very thankful for, again, a team and a board and a community that's sort of just very grounded.
Yeah.
When we have to make those big choices.
Totally.
So yeah,
it's good. It's good. Well, that's it.
This week.
Oh yeah.
So Backstory is happening right now.
Yeah.
Might be over now, but it'll be happening next week. Next week, right here on the channel, same place, same time, same channel.
Isn't it an hour earlier?
It is an hour earlier. Never mind. Not the same time channel.
Yeah.
So it's 7 p.m.
7 o'clock worship night on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Halting after party.
Yeah, but we'll be back the week after.
Yes.
So we'll be back for that. But yeah, join us for the worship night. It's going to be great. I know the teams are already working on the songs and the prayers and all those types of things. So
lovely.
Do it then. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
See ya.
Great.